Good afternoon, wrestling fans, and welcome to another edition of WrestleTalkShow, where we bring you the latest and greatest professional wrestling news, bits, rumors with WWE, ROH, TNA, all that, and many more. If it's news, we cover it. If it's rumors, we tell you that it's rumors. First and foremost, a lot of newsworthy items in this show today. First and foremost, we want to thank our viewers, as we always do, and let's pull up today's show for you. First, to give you your wrestling news and or your wrestling ratings and demographics for the show. This past Friday's April 8th edition of WWE SmackDown brings one of the best ratings nights for sci-fi. Last Friday's edition of SmackDown scored a 2.1 cable rating, which overall is the best it's gotten thus far. Let's talk about that for a minute. Not a big surprise. Coming off the heels of WrestleMania, and Raw had a great showing last week. Our total overall videos, including the archive, we have 6,252 views of all videos on our page. So we want to thank you guys again for your audience. As of today, April 12th, the male demographic took 93% of our total audience, and the female demographic 7% of our total audience. The key demographic, as I speculated a day or two ago, it may be correct, but it also may be the fact that the IP address is a younger person logging on. This is just speculation, a younger person logging on to an adult's computer, but our key demographic is still reported in the male and female 45 to 54-year-olds, with 55% of the total audience as of the 12th. Like I said, everything I just mentioned is pure speculation. It could be that there's 45 to 54-year-olds interested in the product, but when you're aiming for kids and 20-some-year-olds, not to say we are specifically, we encourage anyone who likes the show to, of course, view it, but it just kind of throws me. Like I said, it leads to the earlier speculated that maybe it's younger adults logging on to the adults in the household computers. It could be families. Like we reported last time, who's to know, who's to care. Most people would just tell me to shut up and enjoy the audience, which that's exactly what I'll do. The most popular video to date is the Linda Hogan MMA Challenge, with 11.50% of the total audience watching and enjoying this video. As reported, as always, demographics are updated on a 24-hour period, so they will differ from today into tomorrow, but that's a given. We've noticed steady growth from the end of March into April, so we'd like to think that that growth will stay with us, and you will continue to grow as we grow. And we here at WrestleTalk Show want to bring you the latest and greatest show, as well as much news and our insight as we can. WWE issued a release Monday night following Edge's retirement announcement, with their version of medical details that led to Edge's sudden retirement. Edge had been suffering, quote, numbness and uncomfortable trembling in his arms and hands. It was determined Edge was suffering from neuropraxia, which is a common condition for pro athletes who suffer a severe injury and affecting their nervous system. When Edge returned to the ring following spinal fusion surgery in 2003, the continued wear and tear of wrestling narrowed his spinal column above the fused discs. As a result, there was, quote, less and less vital fluid in Edge's system protecting the spinal cord. Edge mentioned on Raw he could have ended up in a wheelchair if he continued to wrestle. WWE noted, quote, medical professionals cannot clear Edge to compete ever again in the WWE, since doing so could result in paralysis or even death. The MRI mentioned during his retirement speech on Raw was administered at Atlanta Midtown Diagnostic Imaging last Monday, April 4th, the day after his now final match against Alberto Del Rio at WrestleMania 27 in Atlanta. WWE's Chief Medical Director, Dr. Joseph Maroon, reviewed the MRI and determined that Edge would never be cleared to compete again, forcing Edge to retire from the ring. The formal retirement is to come next week on Raw, where it's speculated Edge will relinquish the WWE title, and it's also affected WWE Extreme Rules, which will occur on May 1st. After Raw went off the air, WWE superstar John Cena paid tribute to fellow wrestler Edge. After Raw went off the air, Randy Orton came out and RKO'd Alex Riley. Cena then gave Miz an attitude adjustment. Then Cena got a mic and gave a tribute speech to Edge. He referred to him as his real name, Adam Copeland. Cena mentioned how he remembered Edge winning the title off him in the Elimination Chamber and how people thought he would never amount to more than a tag team champion. Cena said when Edge mentioned he was leaving for medical reasons, he, quote, wasn't joking. Cena asked for one more send-off so Edge could hear backstage. Cena placed the mic in the center of the ring, and the crowd gave Edge a standing ovation. Cena left, then Orton left, concluding the taping. The Miz, this announced for your Extreme Rules. There are 3 matches, including one that was scrapped due to Edge's, as we report again, sudden retirement. This was not known until the day after WrestleMania, so it's good that they got it now, and we'll talk about it in a minute, but there's more news to fall out of this. The Miz will defend the WWE title at Extreme Rules May 1st, 2011 against John Cena and R-Truth in a 3-way dance. This is kind of good because, although this is just my opinion, same thing with Ted DiBiase, you screw up once, in my opinion, it should not bury you. R-Truth or bury you. Forgive the speech impediment there. R-Truth is a great young athlete. He's had a couple of different times, and I've always joked that this was his 3rd time in, that if he didn't make it this time, he could pretty much give up on WWE, as it's a safe assumption. People come in and come out and retry it all the time, but they fade away, and you find them either interdependents or they don't come back to wrestling at all if they can't wrestle on a center stage. But it will be that 3-way dance. Jerry Lawler and Jim Ross versus Michael Cole and Jack Swagger, and they're slotting a replacement match for what would have been World Heavyweight Champion versus Edge and Del Rio. Del Rio is the number 1 contender, but you can imagine that on Raw, Edge will relinquish. This is speculation again. Edge will relinquish the title, and there'll be another contendership, not including Del Rio, but one could argue that there has to be a champion going in. So by default, will Del Rio get his shot Monday night and be the champion going into Extreme Rules, which I don't think could hurt either way, because you're still going to have a title match at Extreme Rules. So what's it going to hurt? 3 additional weeks with Del Rio as your champion. You're going to put him in that spot eventually, it seems like it. So better sooner rather than later, especially with this, again, sudden announcement that Edge will no longer be able to wrestle competitively ever again. Some people are calling this hype. Some people are calling this just another storyline. But given the details, I will research a little more. But we'd like to confirm this as fact here and right now. In other wrestling news, WWE has announced that later this month it will release several wrestlers. Company will hold cuts off until European tour concludes April 24th, 2011. The cuts will include Florida Championship Wrestling wrestlers, NXT rookies, and Tough Enough contestants. Even with the cuts, WWE projects it will maintain the same number of wrestler slots it always has. So more or less, over the year, they built their wrestlers up by like 10 or 20 extra. And this is WWE trimming the fat of what you don't need, but the same amount of slots are still going to be there. Their card's going to consist of what, 50 to 80 wrestlers, give or take, when you divide all the brands up, including FCW, Tough Enough, and NXT. So just say between 50 and 80, and they're just trimming the fat on that. Former wrestling manager Larry Sweeney, real name Alex Wybrow, has died at the age of 29, according to multiple friends and wrestling colleagues. Specific details on Sweeney's death are unknown at this time. Sweeney was in and out of the wrestling business after parting ways with ROH in 2009. Sweeney suffered from bipolar disorder and had a breakdown in 2009, which he described as, quote, the absolute worst event of his life at the time. Sweeney went through a long recovery process in 2010 and was trying to find work outside of pro wrestling. He worked for a handful of independent promotions in 2010, but did not resurface on a national level. Our condolences go out to Sweeney's friends, families, and associates. Chris Hero posted on his Twitter page a send-off to Mr. Sweeney. Visit PW Torch for complete details on that. If you want to see the tributes that were paid. The Rock appears on The Ellen Show this week to hype up his in-ring return for WrestleMania 28 and his one-on-one match against John Cena next year, including how Jersey Shore cast member Snooki was built up to be a competitor and how a lot went into her training. But this is another thing that kind of makes me go on a tangent. And I know we've been saying it the last 3 videos, but you've more or less admitted it. We threw together WrestleMania 27. You schmucks paid $60 to $80 or more, depending on HD quality if you wanted it. But the real matches are going to come next year, so we hope you pay for it next year. And the conclusion, like we've been arguing, regardless of the pay-per-view, the conclusion itself, you've seen last Monday, and not on the biggest stage of them all, WrestleMania. These bleed-ins where you get your pay-per-view, but then it actually concludes on free TV, will always echo the argument, then what was the point, whether it's WrestleMania or Hell in a Cell, regardless of the pay-per-view, what was the point of buying it if you could tune into cable that you're already paying for the next night, see all of the wrestlers that were slotted at that pay-per-view, and get your conclusion on free TV. And then you see your basic cable charges along with this month's WrestleMania pay-per-view, and WWE more or less saying, we had WrestleMania 27, but the real match is going to occur, the real matches are going to occur next year at WrestleMania 28 after we've had a year to bring you real stars. They're at a level where they're running out of stars, and this WrestleMania made them look bad. I know I've given an overall analysis of it multiple times since WrestleMania's conclusion, but you really seen, I mean, Undertaker Triple H was great. The overall wasn't fabulous for WrestleMania as it usually is, but it wasn't a total bummer. But like I said, when you're comparing WrestleMania to everything else, you come back to the argument of it should mean something. WrestleMania, everything else should come to a head at WrestleMania. Your 2 points should meet at WrestleMania. New stories begin. Your stories that have been dragging out over the last 3 or 4 pay-per-views finally get concluded. New superstars emerge. You build into your next year, leading to your next WrestleMania. But so far, what we've got is, you got teased with Rock versus John Cena this year, but give me a year to prepare, and we'll be good. But we'll have a lot to talk about that, and I'm sure we'll come back to it. But moving on in your wrestling news, TNA exclusive, internal changes over TNA identity and product changes. As broken last week, there are internal discussions at a high level in TNA about considering rebranding the company or taking a different approach to the product. Even A change to the company's name is, quote, at least being considered during this round of discussions aimed at giving TNA's product a recognizable identity, as ratings have trended downward long-term and short-term. Notably, the males 18 to 34 demographic for last Thursday's show hitting a one-year low. There have been talks about taking a new approach to the product to make it, quote, clearly different from WWE. Any proposed changes are currently at the discussion stage, but some major changes could be coming sooner rather than later if the talks turn into action. Another element of this story is the Spike TV aspect. Initial ratings for the new season of UFC's Ultimate Fighter have been below average, despite Brock Lesnar starring as one of the coaches. TNA's decline in key demo ratings, along with UFC's disappointing ratings, could prompt Spike to make changes or push TNA to make changes. The downward trends are not going unnoticed. So, we've been saying for years, months into this one, we kind of thought the end of December, I gave you a layout on how to prepare for 2011. Hell, every columnist that does this gave TNA 2010, 2011, 2009, you name a year over the last 4 or 5 years. There have been warnings out there from every show, every reviewer, every columnist you can think of. I mean, just to stress again, this is a show that used to go under the radar and get 3s and 4s. And didn't have the kind of backing Vince did, but Vince left it alone as it had its own fan base and WWE continued to make money, so it didn't mess with anyone. That's my whole argument. Now they're trying to be like the other people and distinguish. Well, now they're taking a step back, because before they wanted to be like the other guys, but now they're taking a step back and trying to clearly identify themselves as something different, whereas the trend has always been, and I've come down hard on Dixie Carter as being her own businesswoman and not always listening to the people around you. I mean, the argument can be made that your president, your top CEO, your president doesn't have to be smart as long as he has smart people around him. But then there also comes the factor of, as a business owner, and at the end of the day, the decision's finally yours. Some of the things we criticize Vince for doing, and also TNA comes under fire, that at the end of the day, Dixie Carter is in charge of that company. Vince Russo, Eric Bischoff should not be as big of a character as he is. We do not need another Vince McMahon. We do not want another Vince McMahon. We do not want WCW 2.0. We do not want you to think that you had anything to do with Jeff Hardy finally cleaning up, because you didn't. You enabled him. Dixie, Eric, Hogan, name it, you've done it, guys. You guys pushed this guy till he had no choice but to break down. And as I put in my argument yesterday, day before, yes, he could have walked away. But as we know, TNA's drug policy, they announce when they're doing their testing, but they don't ever announce any follow-up. So you made this man a world heavyweight champion. You, in theory, paid him more for having that belt and pretended like nothing was happening until he had his downward spiral. Something I've criticized WWE, and I will criticize TNA. WWE contradicts themselves that if you're on top, they let you slide on your wellness policy. Or the wellness policy for popular wrestlers in the 1 percentile, your Triple H's, your John Cena's, do not matter. Because we can always throw a fish like Chris Masters, Kofi Kingston, etc., under the bus when we want to cover up something that is making us money right now. So don't think, TNA, that you're doing yourself any favors. And if UFC's drop is what it takes Spike to say, yo, your 1.3s were good, but we need a little more now if we're going to continue our business relationship, especially in the demo of 18 to 34, because that's a demo you should command or have a reasonable command over, as that's who watches your product. That and younger. When you've taken the ability to suspend someone's disbelief, and they'd rather watch real fighting because the story that used to come off as real and you get involved in it is so far-fetched on both sides of the brands that you'd rather turn on Brock Lesnar. At least it's real fighting. The Ultimate Fighter, at the end of the day, at least it's real. And it's something that I've argued you don't always need, but for former WWE and TNA fans, what WWE and TNA are offering isn't working. They can't suspend their disbelief. Or you flip-flop so many times that they get impatient. You know how many people have reported in and said, I tried to give TNA another shot, but I'm officially done with it? Even with these new changes, maybe you'll get some of your audience back, but you tried this so many times. What did we report? 3 to 6 months ago, they were going to get rid of their X division and restructure. Now they're formally saying they're going to restructure again for what? The 5th time in 2 years? And nothing ever develops because people are so worried, which we made another argument about, so worried about keeping their jobs, they'd rather not say anything, which is a double-edged sword. Yes, you want to see people keep their work, but is it really work if your promotion is not really going anywhere? And in fact, over the last 2 to 5 years, it's downshifted from what it used to be? Spike TV should not be carrying TNA. Anything TNA. It should not be requesting a replacement for Reaction. Reaction was just a disgrace that had Eric Bischoff's name all over it and was the only reason it got there. It was the stupidest concept in the world. If applied correctly, which nothing Eric Bischoff does is, I mean, we can brag about his contributions to the business when WCW was still around. But let's face it, I don't care if you're Wade Keller or any of them. Eric Bischoff's contribution stopped with WCW. And like you guys have been warning, like we've been warning, like every columnist have been warning, you cannot go backwards. The Attitude Era is over, the audience is gone, and now you have to come up with new things to attract the fans and get them to suspend their disbelief, or in the end, wrestling as itself and boxing will lose to the reality of Ultimate Fighter. Because at the end of the day, you want one of two things or both. You want the realism or the ability to suspend your disbelief and pretend that it's real. And in both brands, just to reiterate, you can't do that. Moving on, Stone Cold Steve Austin, an official release date for his DVD movie Knockouts is scheduled for April 26th. And Phase 4 Films is pleased to announce the Blu-ray, DVD, and VOD release of Knockout April 26, 2011, starring pro wrestler turned movie star Stone Cold Steve Austin, featured in The Expendables, Damaged, and The Longest Yard, a pop culture icon with huge fan following from his vital role in World Wrestling Entertainment Arena. The direct-to-DVD and VOD film brings Steve Austin back to the ring to train a rising boxing star played by Daniel Magder, Life with Derek star. Knockout is an inspiring story in the vein of underdog classics such as The Karate Kid and Rocky. In your rumors, an unofficial pay-per-view poster of WWE's Money in the Bank pay-per-view in July is floating around, containing a potential new version of the WWE logo. The unofficial logo incorporates the classic WWF logo from the 1980s and contains a large E attached to the W. Sin Cara made his in-ring debut with a 5-minute victory in the Monday tapings over Primo. WWE began airing vignettes for Awesome Kong's debut, although not shown on camera. Kong was shown smashing the head of a Barbie doll and cackling maniacally, I know I said that wrong, maniacally, in the background of a dark setting. So it's finally good to see, even though a lot of us argued that Sin Cara, Mystico, however you know him as, maybe would have served better as a high-flying match at WrestleMania, considering you had such a dud and thrown together show. But I don't think over the next year we're going to let that down, and actually it'll be the comparison into next year. And the last bit of news, at least temporarily, WWE formed a new faction led by Santino called Apple, which stands for Allied People Powered Loathing Everything. Everything you stand for. Santino, Daniel Bryan, Evan Bourne, Mark Henry are made up of this group. As part of Faction Night Monday, WWE refocused on the core, which defeated Apple in the 8-man tag match. WWE still teased tension within core following the match victory. And just to kind of wrap things up and get our plugs out of the way into the segment, feel free to view this video and many more at youtube.com/CWE Company. Visit our online forums at WrestleTalkShow.webs.com. There you can interact with us, send direct show emails to cwecompany@gmail.com, interact with our online forum, check out the donate page for PayPal, donate as little or as much as you want to the show so we can make this production better for you. And if you can't donate, the next best thing to money is word of mouth. Tell a friend. Help our demographics. Help our page views. Help our unique viewers into April. We're noticing growth. Let's keep that growth up. Visit our friends tonight, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Central, at smartwrestlingfan.com for their nightly podcast, which runs from 9 to midnight or better. Basically, from 9 to 10 is the stuff you won't get to hear lately. The stuff you won't get to hear factored into the podcast if you watch it live. That's normally the way why it runs later. It's a 3-hour weekly podcast that I'm sure they'll have all their feedback. If you're looking for a different avenue this week, visit smartwrestlingfan.com tonight, 9 p.m., 6 p.m. Eastern, or 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Central, and they'll have their recaps on WrestleMania, Raw, SmackDown, Impact, and so much more. It'll go over 3 hours. Who knows who's going to guest star? The front man is Joe Negron. Visit our friends tonight at pwtorch.com. Check it out now to find out their new time slots. I don't know if they went back to it, but they were running a 7:30 start time. They were running for about 2 hours leading up to Mania. I don't know if they went back to the 5:30 Eastern setup, but if they have, go back and listen to the archive stuff. A lot of build-up into the last 5 weeks. A lot of interesting reviews and blogs are out there, so check them out. Check us out. Friend us at Facebook and Twitter, both at CWE Company. Comment directly under the video you're watching. And remember, as you're watching, after you're done watching, like or dislike every video. Post a comment. My next video coming out later this afternoon into tonight will focus solely on the feedback for the last, let's say, 2 to 5 weeks into WrestleMania leading right to now. But going into our segment, what do you think of, I think it's a good sign, but what do you think is a wrestling fan's announcement of Edge's retirement? I think, well, I have a lot of different views. I mean, just reading that quote, I bring you the news the same time I bring myself the news. I spend about a half hour to or better getting the news from various sources. We credit all those sources, and I can't help but stress enough. I call them out when they do wrong, and I'll praise them when they do all right. But it's good to see Edge leave with his health. But does anybody think, since the wear and tear came from his spinal fusion, can the argument be made that he shouldn't have been allowed back into wrestling anyway? Just because the wear and, as a direct quote, rewind if you didn't hear it, the wear and tear of wrestling from his spinal fusion and return to now, leading up to his retirement, official as of next Monday, where it's rumored he will relinquish the belt. Maybe they caught it in time. Maybe Edge didn't want to quit, but you would think that they would see, since his return leading up to last week at WrestleMania, that he was just getting worse and not getting any better. But again, I won't nitpick. It's good to see that they jumped on it before he, quote, ended up in a wheelchair or death. So we knock them when they don't do good. So let's praise them when they do. Props to you, WWE. You saved one. One that will, arguably, Edge was getting kind of generic. But he was young in comparison. I think he still had a lot left to do that could explain why the bit of a delay. Why, like we were saying in the last couple of videos, it's hard to say if me or you were getting multi-million-dollar contracts to perform. Now, granted, the road schedule always comes up. The wear and tear always comes up. It always gets factored in. But it's hard to say that if a doctor said, this is killing you, but then me or you looked at it and said, hell, I got to perform 3 nights a week, and I'm making multi-million dollars to do it. It's hard to say. I'm assuming most of you are like me. We don't have a huge nest egg. We don't brag about having a huge nest egg. It's not who we are. But would we walk away from that money so easily either? And who's to say that it's not all about money? And the argument, that it's all about money. The argument that we made a couple weeks ago was Triple H, I kind of always show credit to, because now he's set the poise as the new leader when Vince leaves. But he already established his wealth before he came into wrestling. He wanted to be a wrestler. And he went back to training to be a wrestler. And it wasn't about the money for him. It never seemed like it was. He could leave at any time, securing a financial future, whether it be from his outside ventures in business at the time, or even presently, he could leave with a nice package from WWE. And you could also factor in his relationship to the McMahons, how long he's been there, etc., etc. It all plays a factor. But it boils down to, you have your people that are here for the wrestling, and you have your people that are here for the wrestling as long as the money's right. Personally, I think those that are here for the wrestling and money secondary tend to give you more than the people that just want to go out, phone it in, and get their paycheck, as we've seen a lot of them. But for the most part, you can tell that John Cena loves the business, like we've argued. You can tell the Miz loves the business. There's a multiple of wrestlers that love this business. And just to bring it back to Edge, maybe he didn't want to go out so quick. Or seeing that he just came back, and it was kind of a bummer. A month later, you're being told that, because I imagine this isn't a surprise, that it took some time to think about, that this didn't happen just overnight, that this recent MRI just kind of set it in stone, but that it's always been there over the last couple months, or even since his return, that, hey, Edge, it's you can still compete, but it's like they're doing with my arthritis. We can manage it, but you're not getting any better. And they may have told him a year ago, start thinking about retirement. You don't know. We won't know until, I imagine a lot of stories will generate this week into next week's actual retirement. But you don't know what factored in. Maybe Edge didn't want to lead. Maybe they wanted to ride out a storyline that Edge was working on. Even though, I mean, he's been there. He's a focal point for the brand. And a once popular wrestler's kind of losing his momentum. So if he's going to lead, I would argue that it's better it happen now than later when he's just a mess. Or the brand turns his character into a mess. Leave now with everything you've accomplished. Kind of my Hulk Hogan, Ric Flair, etc. argument. But until next time, wrestling fans, thank you for your time, your viewership. You guys mean the world to me. Thank you. We appreciate it. And again, we are looking for columnists to watch the shows, pay-per-views, and kind of split up the work. If you're interested in that, send your resume along with the area of interest to cwecompany@gmail.com. Send me a private message on the Facebook page. Remember, comment at youtube.com/cwecompany. Check out this video and the archive. Tell a friend. Help us grow. Help you grow as wrestling informers. Help us grow as a wrestling review product. And we all grow collectively. Until next time, wrestling fans, thank you for your time and enjoy your week in pro wrestling.